Welcome back to LGBT ABCs. Today's letter is D, so we're going to talk about the prefix Demi. My name is Maybe Burke, and you're watching Makeup for Lost Time. Reporting to you live as somebody who formerly identified as a demi-woman. The prefix Demi can mean half or partially. People get hung up on the half part when we're talking about identity, but this prefix shows up in a lot of other places besides just talking about the identity labels we're going to talk about here today. In ballet, you can do a demi-plie. In pop stars, you can have a demi-lovato. But when we use demi to talk about identity labels when it comes to gender and sexuality, we are talking about people whose identities fall into more than one category, or people whose experiences can't necessarily latch onto one of the more typical identities you might think of. But let's start with sexuality, because what the heck am I talking about? Demisexual is on the spectrum of what we think of as asexual identities. There are some different terms that folks will use in this category: demisexual, gray sexual. There's a couple of different ways that people will talk about their experiences here. And like with most experiences of identity, different people will talk about them in different ways. But my best understanding of demisexual that I've heard most folks use as somebody who doesn't identify as demisexual is an experience of asexuality that exists until there is a significant emotional bond formed. Knowing that asexual doesn't necessarily always mean sex repulsed or not an interest in any sexual activity. The most common way I've heard people use demisexual is somebody who needs that emotional bond before they experience that attraction. And this is where it's really important for us to know and to acknowledge the difference between sexual orientation and romantic orientation, and understand that those things are separate for some people. And so demisexual people might feel really romantically attracted to somebody without there being a sexual element to it until that significant bond is formed. Black is so hard to work with. Like, actually, as an allosexual person, or somebody who does experience sexual attraction to people that I don't have that bond with, I kind of wish that that weren't true. Like, I kind of wish that I could be demisexual. Like, it would have been a lot safer in my 20s if I wasn't sexually attracted to strangers. I'm trying to do the demisexual flag, or a look inspired by the colors of the demisexual flag, but grays and blacks are a lot to deal with. Everybody's experience of their sexuality is going to be unique and different, and demi is just one of the terms that we can use to describe people's relationship to their sexuality. Not everybody uses the term the way that I'm talking about it right now, but that is my understanding of how most people use that term. Again, coming as somebody who does not identify as demisexual, but I know several people that do. And I know it's probably pretty problematic of me to be saying that I wish that I could be demisexual in that way, but it does sound like nicer to me. But I did mention that I used to identify as a demi-woman because most of the prefixes that we use for gender or sexuality can be used on both. So while there are demisexual people who exist within that umbrella of asexuality, there are also demigender people who identify partially with a gender and partially with another gender. And this is where it's important to think about like the gender labels as categories and not just like one finite thing. Yes, the prefix demi can mean half, but when I identified as a demi-woman, it wasn't because I was half of a woman. It was because my identity existed partially in the category of being non-binary and partially in the category of woman, which is actually, like, still true. I am a non-binary trans woman. I just stopped having that be the term that felt most affirming and most accurate to describe my experiences. It is wild, the difference that white makes on the eye. There are demi-women and demi-men and demi-boys and demi-girls, depending on people's, like, age and comfortability with terms. The fun thing about the label for me was I am a trans woman who was identifying as a demi-woman, but I also know, like, several people who weren't assigned male at birth and still identified with the term. I loved the kind of versatility of the term and the way that different people have very similar experiences from very different starting points. And I always resist the narrative that non-binary is like a stepping stone to a binary trans identity, but for me, demi-woman definitely was me working to claim the term woman for myself. But that is obviously just my unique experience. I mean, I'm sure there are other people who have a similar experience, but that is not the experience of what demi-woman or demigender means. Again, demi doesn't just mean half or in progress or incomplete. Demi, in these contexts especially, is an acknowledgement of the multitude of identity. I have used several different terms to describe my own identity over the years, and have stayed pretty consistent that there actually won't be enough words to really describe how I experience my own gender. And again, for me, how many times can I hit that disclaimer? I'm obviously talking about a lot of different people's experiences and then highlighting my own experience within it. The terms that I have used to describe my gender over the years have been built on what I want people to understand about me. For a long time, my non-binary identity was very liberating and felt like the biggest part of me. In terms of identity, I guess. And while my identity is still based in those two categories of woman and non-binary, I ultimately decided that I would rather have people know me as a woman and not understand that I'm also non-binary than have them know me as non-binary and not understand that I'm also a woman. And that's why I don't lead with the non-binary identity anymore. That's why I don't call myself a demi-woman anymore. If you get to know me, if you understand my identity on the level I understand it, yeah, you get to know more. Is this just like gothic? Do you understand what I'm trying to do with the demi flag? At the end of the day, all of these words that we use are just ways to describe our experiences to other people. And having terms and prefixes like demi and terms like demisexual and demigender are just ways to get people closer to that understanding for people who don't have those typical identities. And I even hate calling them typical, but you know what I mean, right? To me, using terms like demi is a step in breaking down the binary, not just of man or woman, but the binary of asexual or allosexual. The binary of binary or non-binary, you know? I don't know, I feel like the people who get it are gonna get it, and the people who don't are gonna be like, what? But that's also true for most of my content, I guess. Alright, I'm gonna go finish my base, I guess. Stick around as we make up for lost time.